A Fox News alert just hours from now at Virginia's Longwood University. Tim Kain, Mike Pence get their moment to shine before their biggest audience yet. Together on the same stage, both looking to make a case for their ticket and sway voters to their side. 35 days until Election Day. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here today, co-host of After the Bell on Fox Business, Melissa Francis. Also from FBN, Dagan McDowell, former National Security Council member under Presidents Bush and Obama, Jillian Turner. And today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, the other half of FBN's After the Bell, the TV marriage.
We got FBN well covered today.
Forbes on Fox as well. David Asman is fired up, but he's also outnumbered.
Yeah, I am today, but I don't mind being outnumbered by you gals.
Oh,
not at all.
Very nice.
And they don't let us sit next to each other. What's up with that?
Yeah, they put me in the middle, man.
Just 1 degree of separation.
The man who heard Jimi Hendrix play at Woodstock.
Bingo.
Wow, but you were only two. Really? They let you in. Let's move.
I lied to everybody. Yeah.
We'll get started. Tonight, the one and only debate for the Republican and Democratic vice presidential nominees. Indiana Governor Mike Pence faces off against Senator and former Virginia Governor Tim Kain. And while it will be the number twos on the big stage tonight, many expect the showdown to be more about the top of the ticket. Mike Pence, though, gives us a preview.
We're going to be talking about the visions and the choice the American people face at the top of the ticket. I kind of hope we get to talk about our records as well. While Tim Kain was governor of Virginia, unemployment doubled. And while I've been governor of the state of Indiana, we've cut employment in half.
And the Clinton campaign is also giving us a preview of what we can expect from Tim Kain. Senior campaign spokesperson Karen Finney now.
What's the strategy?
Well, the key goal, obviously, is to talk about what, there are two very different visions of this country. Actually, tonight I listened to Kellyanne say that. I agree with that. And I do think it's about change, and I think it's about what kind of change. I mean, we believe that Donald Trump is, basically suggesting a lot of policies that would take us back.
All right, so there is thinking that this may be more about substance because these two men have not gone against each other previously, so there wouldn't be those personal back and forths.
Well, and they also have records. They have political records, somebody Donald Trump doesn't have. They were both governors. One was a tax cutter, one was a tax raiser. I guess you can guess who was who.
Right.
Tim Kain has got to defend the fact that he raised taxes $4 billion. Taxes were lowered, tax rates were lowered across the board in Indiana when Mike Pence was governor. There's also the issue of faith, though, which is kind of interesting, something Donald Trump doesn't talk a lot about. Both guys are men of faith in their own way.
How does that play a role?
Well, 24% of the electorate, 24% are Catholics. We have heard a lot about Tim Kain, who's had a lot of work as a Catholic volunteer in places like Honduras, where some people were saying, and he himself had said, he was hobnobbing with liberation theologists. That was a mixture of Marxism and Christianity that was very popular in the 1980s and did a lot of damage in my mind. I used to cover it for the Wall Street Journal at the time. Liberation theologists did a lot of damage. Tim Kain was hanging around with these guys. I'd be interested to see if that comes up, because the Catholic vote is split between traditionalists and the more liberal Catholics, and that's going to play into the election.
All right, what about foreign policy? We have a lot going on right now. You've got chemical weapons used again in Aleppo, Syria. The situation there devolving back into a civil war, no ceasefire, and that's just one of the issues on the horizon. You've got Mosul, potentially the taking of that in the month of October. How will America fit into that picture? Is it good for a lot to talk about?
Yeah, and these candidates are going to have to jump right in on these issues. I think that Trump and Clinton, to a certain degree, almost had the luxury of debating back and forth about whose character is better. I don't know that the vice presidents are going to have as much of an opportunity to do that this evening. I think that it's going to be a lot more substantive. National security is ranking very high across the electorate, all ages, all genders, all races right now amongst the American people. So my prediction is that's going to feature heavily again, all the issues you just mentioned. A week ago we were talking about Hillary Clinton preparing to take on 2 Donald Trumps. But I think for both of these candidates tonight, there's a really tough job in that they're both preparing to take on criticism against themselves and one another, as well as their big ticket counterparts.
So, I mean, we've watched these before. The vice presidential candidates usually don't move the needle for voters. Does it matter more this time?
Yes,
than
I think
before?
for a lot of reasons. I mean, number one, because of the age of the top of the ticket in both cases. I'm really looking forward to this because I think both of these guys have a lot of substance. I want to hear that. It's kind of like Halloween when you have too much candy and the next day you're like, give me some broccoli. I'm ready for a little bit of broccoli. Yes. Give me some vegetables. I need a little sustenance and substance here.
I don't even want that.
No broccoli.
But I think rule number one is don't screw up. Don't be the first soundbite that gets cut on every morning show.
Do you think there's a danger of that with either of these men?
I think that it's tricky because if the questions are as lopsided as they were in the first presidential debate, then Tim Kain is going to get a complete pass on anything to do with the foundation, the FBI investigation, the server, Benghazi, and then Mike Pence is going to get asked about early morning tweets and tax returns. So I think that's tricky. But in that soundbite from the Hillary Clinton representative, did she say change? Because what Hillary Clinton's campaign is advocating is exactly what we've gotten in 8 years. Higher taxes, more spending, hideous regulations, and more Obamacare. So if you're running on change, how in the Lord's name
All right, so
are you going to argue that?
For your point on Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, though, not so much, as he went down the road of calling Obamacare the craziest thing he's ever seen. I do want to get to this. It's the vice presidential candidate's favorability. And I said these two men in the past, we've seen some stumbles, Dan Quayle and others.
Wow.
And we've seen some stumbles atop the ticket as well. What are your thoughts on this, Melissa, as you look at these numbers?
I think of these guys, most people, I mean, Karl Rove said it's the debate between what's his name and Hoosier face. You know, I mean, it's like nobody knows who these guys are.
You don't mean Hoosier.
Yeah, no. I mean, as in no one knows these two guys, probably can't tell them apart. I really do believe that.
Right.
I don't think that they're, I don't think that... I just think they're so middle of the road that they kind of get out there and you get a little substance, but I don't think it adds that much to the total overall.
Or maybe
let
it
me
adds
disagree
that.
a little bit, because I don't think they're middle of the road. I mean, when you come to Pence, he is a real hard-knuckle conservative. Okay, but I think you're not going to see the kind of mistake that was made by Ross Perot's running mate. Remember, the first thing he said when he got up there was, "Who am I and where am I?" I mean, you're not going to see that kind of. These guys are smart guys. And by the way, Obamacare, you mentioned Obamacare. I think, getting back to the faith idea, there's a question about whether Obamacare intrudes on people's personal beliefs. There's a part of it that forces a lot of God-fearing people to do things that they think is against God, and they're forced to do it anyway. That, I think, will come up in this debate.
Neither governor offering it to people who may have some problems with the policies.
But on that religious freedom law that was passed in Indiana that was then changed, I think that Mike Pence probably doesn't want to have to discuss that at this debate.
But you can talk about Obamacare and bring the faith issue in and try to... Mike Pence is a great debater. He's going to find ways of moving things away from subjects that make him feel uncomfortable.
Because that one issue leaves something for both the left and the right to hate, the way that was handled.
And neither of them have like outsized personalities the way that Trump and Clinton
And again, that may be a good thing for viewers because they can actually just sit back and watch and not look for all the hand signals and things that we watch for on the screen when we know that there's some drama behind it. I mean, it's just natural human...
Americans are getting broccoli.
Natural human instinct, except for broccoli after Halloween. I don't know. We're going to talk about that.
The fact that David said that he doesn't think there's going to be a mistake guarantees there will be.
Oh, I'll have to come back here tomorrow.
No, I mean,
throw it down.
You called it.
Keep it right here for all-day coverage of that VP showdown. Then tune in at 9 p.m. Eastern for the actual debate, followed by the best analysis in the business. You know that's how we roll. That's 9 p.m. Eastern right here on Fox News Channel. The FNC for the cool kids. Melissa?
All right, Donald Trump doubling down on the defense of his taxes, saying he legally used the laws to boost his business. This after the New York Times reported that he could have avoided paying federal income tax for up to 18 years. But he told supporters he can use what he knows to help everyone else.
The unfairness of the tax laws is unbelievable. It's something I've been talking about for a long time, despite, frankly, being a big beneficiary of the laws. But I'm working for you now. I'm not working for Trump. As a businessman and real estate developer, I have legally used the tax laws to my benefit and to the benefit of my company, my investors, and my employees. I mean, honestly, I have brilliantly I have brilliantly used those laws.
But Hillary Clinton is slamming the Republican nominee over these revelations, saying he's put his own interest ahead of the country's.
Trump represents the same rigged system that he claims he's going to change. The whole story tells us everything we need to know about how Trump does business. While he was busy with his accountants trying to figure out how he could keep living like a billionaire. And all the while, he was using his political connections to collect hundreds of millions of dollars in government subsidies and extra tax breaks for his companies. In other words, Trump was taking from America with both hands and leaving the rest of us with the bill.
Oh, yeah. So, David, what exactly is the outrage here? That he didn't pay more than he owes? Because I don't make a habit of tipping Uncle Sam for good service.
Absolutely.
I don't think he's doing a great job.
Well, nor
do
27 corporations within the S&P 500 that didn't pay any taxes at all. These tax codes were created by people, by politicians, just like Hillary Clinton. In fact, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton had a lot to do with the way the tax code is formulated right now. Bill Clinton passed a lot of laws when he was president, or signed a lot of laws when he was president, that actually gave companies the breaks that Donald Trump is taking advantage of. Who knows? Maybe Trump at the time contributed money to Clinton specifically for those tax benefits. So the whole system is awful. It's terrible. You got to cut all of these deductions, these special interest deductions, and lower the rates. Yeah. Cut the deductions, lower the rates. Frankly, the one politician that's saying we ought to do that, who's running for president, is Donald Trump.
Did she really say using political connections? I mean, she is the political connection. She is the one who has made $100 million off selling that access. She accuses him of using it. She isn't.
I said this yesterday. She and her husband enriched themselves both in power and purse on the backs of the American people. And that's shameful. But in terms of the messaging, that's the kind of messaging that the Trump campaign needs to have. Because Giuliani and Christie used the word genius, and then Donald Trump talks about he brilliantly used the tax law. It's like Wile E. Coyote talking about Wile E. Coyote, super genius. He likes the sound of it as the train is barreling down the tracks towards him. He needs to shift and figure out how this resonates. Here's how you do it. You tell the American people, who do you think makes better decisions with your money? The government taking your tax dollars, and bureaucrats and elected officials making decisions about your money, or you get to keep it and you get to make that decision?
But here's the problem with that. I agree that no one's paying more taxes than they need to. Whether you're an individual, a family, a corporation, fine, right? So he hired some genius tax lawyer and figured out how to maximize that opportunity. I commend him for that. But he doesn't get to have it both ways, right? He can't at the same time claim that he's an amazing businesswoman if he did in fact lose $1 billion that year.
Yeah, you know,
businessman.
You know who else has had the same kind of loss,
though? He can't have his cake and eat it too. If we're going to accept the reality
but
that
maybe he can have his cake and eat it too, because maybe what he can do is come out with the tax returns in his hand as like a syllabus type of situation. Turn to page 52. Let me tell you why this matters, and say, you know what? On the other side, maybe you're upset because we figured out how to show you what these tax codes can do. I mean, is there any way he could own this?
Well, I think there is, and it's in the news. Atlantic City has just declared default. Atlantic City is about to go bankrupt because the casinos, which Hillary Clinton said yesterday, how could you lose money in a casino? Well, a lot of casinos have lost money. Atlantic City is now in default. The city is about to go bankrupt. He got out at just the right time. He lost money, but he was able to build it back. Anybody in business, look, he's created 30 to 40,000 jobs of people who are still working. People lose money all the time in business. You ask any businessman, I know Melissa knows this.
That's the point.
You ask any businessman, have you failed more than you succeeded? Everyone will say yes.
Whether they
you fail more often than you succeed in business. He failed, but he built himself back up.
You just said it for him to also show on his returns that he was charitable, because that's what some people are asking. They're saying, well, look, is there the balance on that he gave money away to? I don't know. It's just a question.
I don't know. To your point about the losses, I mean, Warren Buffett, who's worshipped on the left, has had the exact same size loss as has George Soros. So I mean,
he takes the deductions too.
Of course they do. Of course course they do.
Billions.
All right, Donald Trump is doubling down on his tax, saying he brilliantly used the law to his advantage. Hillary Clinton is calling him the poster boy for a rigged system. So who has the better argument? And Republican lawmakers say the FBI agreed to destroy the laptops of Clinton aides, including former Chief of Staff Cheryl Mills, as part of their immunity deals. Now they want to know why. And after the show, you can join us on our live chat by clicking on the Overtime tab at foxnews.com/outnumbered. We'll be making noises like that.
I'll do my Hillary impression. How about that?
The rebel yell. Do the rebel yell.
There's a dance that goes with
You
that
want to
sound.
hear that.
Or go to facebook.com/outnumbered FNC. The show's out of control. And of course, you can tweet us. See you there.
Fox News Alert want to show you a live event that's going on right now in the battleground state of Pennsylvania, Haverford. And this obviously is Hillary Clinton on the stump. She is holding what her team describes as a conversation with families to roll out her policies for children, families, and economy that she says would favor them. It's a town hall style. In the audience today, and who spoke on her behalf just moments ago, her daughter, Chelsea Clinton. Also, actress Elizabeth Banks is there as well as part of this. They're on stage with her, and they'll begin, we're told, shortly after she makes this opening statement to take those town hall type questions. We'll monitor this for headlines pertaining to the big issues of the day and bring you the news as it happens.
When you talk about the mental health problems, when people come back from war and combat and they see things that maybe a lot of the folks in this room have seen many times over, and you're strong and you can handle it, but a lot of people can't handle it. And they see horror stories, they see events that you couldn't see in a movie, nobody would believe it.
That was Donald Trump explaining why he would support a more holistic approach to dealing with PTSD. He was answering a question from a veteran, but the mainstream media quickly pounced on his comments with headlines such as this. Trump appears to suggest veterans with PTSD are not strong. Trump implies vets suffer from PTSD and those who do cannot handle war. And draft dodger Trump, PTSD sufferers are weak. Those are some of the things that are interpretations of what he said. Hillary Clinton also tweeted this. A person who implies that veterans are suffering from PTSD are not strong is unfit to be commander-in-chief, period, end quote. But the veteran who asked Trump the question is standing by him, saying in a statement, quote, I think it's sickening that anyone would twist Mr. Trump's comments to me in order to pursue a political agenda. I took his comments to be thoughtful and understanding of the struggles many veterans have, and I believe he is committed to helping them, end quote. David?
Wow. Where do you begin? First of all, it's such BS coming from Hillary because of the fact that the Clinton Foundation has raised over $2 billion. You know how much they spent on Veterans Affairs over the years? $100,000. I haven't done the math, but $100,000 is a tiny, tiny little bit of $2 billion. But the main thing, we had General Keane on. General Keane, I think you'll agree, Jillian, is not a political guy. General Keane said he is the one candidate that is speaking for the military like no other candidate has spoken for the military in decades. So if non-political guys in the military can see that Donald Trump is standing by the veterans like nobody else has, I think we believe the comments of that veteran who asked him the question rather than these headlines by newspapermen who none of whom probably spent any time in the military.
Fox News polling actually asked about the two candidates and which one that they thought between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump best represented them, and that poll found by double digit a lead by Donald Trump.
Yeah,
well,
it was 19 percentage points in a two-way race. 19 percentage points, he crushes her.
And again, the best way, aside from focusing on veterans issues, which is sorely needed in this country. I think it's been one of the most underrepresented topics that we've talked about this entire cycle. Everything from mental health to health care, the whole VA scandal, to suicide rates, to unemployment. Veterans' unemployment rate in this country is astronomically higher than that for the general population, civilian population. But the other way to support our veterans and our military and our military families is to plan and implement good national security policy. And that's why I think part of the reason this has been such a theme running throughout this debate.
I think that this is a coordinated effort by the left and liberals and the Democrats to hurt Trump with the veterans, because it has been Trump who has been speaking for weeks and months about those very suicide rates. And he got fact-checked every which way to Sunday when he came out in July and said a shocking 20 veterans are committing suicide each and every day, especially our older veterans. True from start to finish. And he also, what he unveiled, he wants a hotline, a suicide hotline that goes right to the White House. He wants to open up the private market for people with care. I don't know how anybody could listen to. I heard that live and I was shocked at the interpretation of what he said.
was too.
He was struggling with his words, but who doesn't when talking about such a meaningful subject?
It really speaks to the issue of how we talk about mental challenges in this country and how we don't always have the nomenclature and the lingo that people are comfortable with. But we know Donald Trump to be, and this is just an observation, I mean, he will say things eloquently at times, but he's willing to jump in. So then the question begins, what should the answer back look like from Hillary Clinton? Should it just be a criticism of how he said it?
I mean, it's interesting because I like you, I watched the quote a bunch of times and I didn't see what they were seeing. And we are actually having the moderator from that event on David and my show today at 4 p.m. on Fox Business to ask him what it was like in that room, because I don't know how they came up with that interpretation. He's made a lot of gaffes. That's not one of them. But this is actually offensive to me because this is a very serious issue where there are a lot of people suffering. And to be talking about the language versus what the real problem is that must be addressed is astounding.
Well, it's good we're talking about it, right? Maybe the good thing to come out of it is a little bit of attention for these issues.
Maybe.
And he got us to get there again. We'll move on. It looks like the 2016 race could be a nail-biter. That's what the pollings are showing. New polls show just how close things are in some key battleground states, like Pennsylvania, where Hillary Clinton's talking right now. We'll break down the numbers and talk about how either candidate can get the edge. And millions of Americans may be in the path of Hurricane Matthew. It was a 5, and now it's still a Category 4. When it hits you, it is powerful either way. It's threatening Florida and the Carolinas after leaving the southwest portion of Haiti a short time ago. The latest storm tracker. Stay close.
A Fox News alert, the governors of Florida and North Carolina declaring a state of emergency as Hurricane Matthew barrels towards the United States. It is one of the most powerful Atlantic storms in recent history. It is now slamming parts of Haiti. Chief meteorologist Rick Reichmuth is live in the Fox Extreme Weather Center with the latest. Give us the update on this enormous storm. Wow.
Yeah, a really dangerous situation for Haiti, obviously. But we're going to be seeing some spots here, probably in excess of 40 inches of rain. That will cause massive mudslides, landslides, and flooding. And the storm just went over this kind of western tip right here. Port-au-Prince right just to the east of that. A lot of population. A lot of people living in conditions that are really susceptible to these kinds of storms. 30 to 40 inches of rain, then it pulls in across the Bahamas, and it's going to rake pretty much everybody in the Bahamas over the next couple of days. Eastern Cuba, by the way, that eastern tip. But then this takes us into Thursday morning. You see it kind of make this track all the way up the Bahamas. And then we start to see this get very close to Florida. Hurricane warnings in effect throughout all of the Bahamas, except for that southeastern island just to watch. But now we have hurricane watches in effect, Melissa, all the way up to the Brevard-Volusia County line here in Florida. And the track of the storm looks like it is going to hug the U.S. coastline, the eastern seaboard, for about 5 days. So almost anybody, say from just to the north of Miami, all the way up through parts of New England are going to be watching this. And you see the center of this track. That is kind of the best guess of where this is going to go at this point. If it tracks just a little bit farther towards the west, much bigger impacts. If it stays around 100 miles offshore, less impacts, maybe at least tropical storm force winds, likely hurricane force winds at some points across northern Florida into Georgia, and then the Carolinas. We may or may not see a landfall from this, but you get the idea. The entire eastern seaboard here dealing with this storm for a very prolonged period of time. So we have a long time to go. If it makes landfall as a major hurricane, then we have huge problems with a storm surge. If it just hugs this line, then we have major problems with beach erosion and rain for pretty much everybody across the eastern seaboard. So a lot of flooding, certainly. Whether we have a storm surge situation remains to be seen if we get a landfall. But anybody on the eastern seaboard needs to watch it.
Wow. All right, we will keep an eye on it. Thank you for that.
You bet.
With just 5 weeks until Election Day, a new CNN ORC poll shows that Hillary Clinton now leading Donald Trump 47 to 42% nationally. But the battleground state polls tell a different story. A Quinnipiac survey has Hillary Clinton leading by 5 points in Florida. The candidates virtually tied in North Carolina, but Trump with a 5-point lead in Ohio, and the two again tied in Pennsylvania. Hillary is apparently taking notice. She's in Pennsylvania today campaigning with Chelsea, her daughter, and actress Elizabeth Banks, who was at the DNC, of course. Her husband, Bill, is stumping for her in Ohio, and First Lady Michelle Obama is down in North Carolina. David, you look at these polls, Trump needs to win all of the Romney states and then add some, so he's got to win North Carolina. The path to victory for him is still narrow.
By the way, we just talked about the path of the hurricane. That could actually have an influence in both Florida and North Carolina. Remember Sandy in 2012?
That's an
that hit right
point.
before the election, and because people rely on the federal government when a hurricane hits, it bodes well if the federal government handles it right. So watch that hurricane. Pennsylvania, I think, is the key state, though, because if Hillary wins Pennsylvania, I think it's going to be very hard for Donald Trump. And you mentioned one poll which shows him even in Pennsylvania. There's another one that came out, a Franklin poll, Franklin University poll, and that shows Hillary ahead by 9 points. That's
I've got that one
big
here,
lead.
actually, that Pennsylvania Franklin and Marshall College poll. Clinton 47, Trump 38.
That's big. That might have been an outlier to the upside for Hillary, but still, you got to watch
Here's something else I notice about it, too, and, we can have all sorts of discussions about who's on which ballots and so on and so forth, but with Johnson and Stein, we've just been watching what happens when it's a four-way, whether or not people would actually step to the ballot box and vote in that state. Johnson's still getting a paltry 5, so it really is the double-digit difference now, with nearly double-digit with Clinton and Trump. And what's driving that?
Trump needs to win the Romney states, so he's got to seal North Carolina, which Romney took away from President Obama. But he's got to win Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and those two states look out of reach at this point.
It's interesting to me, especially in the battleground states, how much the polling has gone back and forth. Based on you can kind of feel a week slip away from someone and then come back later. And we've really seen a flip-flop in all of those areas. So I sort of think in a lot of ways it's still early. It could go back and forth so many more times. When he was disciplined and on message, he collapsed a 10-point lead that Hillary Clinton had. And it really just reminds you, right, how much he has to stay disciplined, stay on message, stay on prompter. That worked for him when he did it over a period of time. It erodes when he falls out of the saddle and onto the ground.
I want to add, that
the pendulum,
because it's critical to look at when these polls were taken, and this Quinnipiac survey was taken so after the debate, September 27th through October 2nd, which would have been over the weekend, which would have factored in a lot of the Miss Universe tweeting and also the tax returns potentially, and so maybe it could have been worse in some of these,
I
polls.
think, though, Jillian, there is an element in this that we kind of skip over, and that is the fact that there are a lot of people who are voting right now. And you can't, I don't know how reflected they are in the polling.
And the independents who seem to be, according to this poll, tilting in favor of Hillary Clinton still at this point. I don't know. Being one of them, it's a decision I'm going to have to make at a certain point. At the national level here, we also always break down these candidates according to the demographics and where they're going. So one of the bulwarks for Hillary Clinton has been the African American community. For Donald Trump, it's been white males who have not had college educations for one reason and another, right? And Hillary is starting to chip into that a little bit. That's what was really alarming to me here. It says she now trails Trump among that group, white males without college degrees. The chasm has narrowed from 44 points in early September to 21 points now.
A big deal.
That should really be worrying to the Trump campaign. And if I was an advisor to them, I'd be focusing on those. Those folks.
That's the critical vote in Pennsylvania, and I know that's why a lot of his surrogates are on the ground. I think they're like of white voters who didn't come out in the last election. It's more than 2 million people, I think.
Ooh, oh, wow.
That's a lot.
That big number
in the western part of the state. GOP lawmakers, meantime, outraged after learning that the FBI made an agreement with 2 top Clinton aides to destroy their laptops after reviewing them and even to limit their search.
Can't make that up.
Why would they do that?
Yet another stunning twist in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Now the head of the House Judiciary Committee is demanding to know why the FBI hatched immunity deals with 2 top Clinton aides that included an agreement to destroy the laptops of Cheryl Mills and ex-campaign staffer Heather Samuelson after reviewing them. The deal also limited the FBI's search to no later than the end of January 2015, potentially preventing agents from discovering if there was any evidence of obstruction of justice. So I don't know how you guys feel, but the longer this story keeps percolating with little pieces here and there that are coming out drip, 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 it really hurts the campaign. I think that myself being an independent voter, what I see here is that the reason this has had such staying power is not because of all these developments along the way, but because of the fact that this email story really cuts across what I would call like the 2 of the major themes we've been discussing in this campaign I mentioned earlier, one being national security policy and the other being character.
By the way, it not only hurts the campaign, it hurts the FBI. We just had a source in the FBI saying this is a black. I mean, you give immunity.
What did your source say? You swallowed that. I want to know what it was.
The source said that this is a black eye for the FBI, giving immunity first and then helping to destroy evidence that could have been used in a criminal trial.
Well, let me just say this. Jim Comey said, the head of the FBI said last week that the FBI was not part of the discussions about handing immunity to Cheryl Mills and Heather Samuelson.
What?
Why not? Why weren't they? If it involves evidence gathering, why weren't you involved? He didn't have an answer as to why immunity was even needed. By the way, if a grand jury had been impaneled at the Justice Department, you could use a warrant. You could use a subpoena to get this evidence. I want somebody to call Martha Stewart on the phone and say, "Hey, how about getting prosecuted for the cover-up and obstruction of justice and lying to investigators?" Because that is exactly what was going on in this instance.
That's so
nobody's going to get touched.
We haven't heard from her. I wonder if she's tweeting about this or if she's online talking about it.
I follow her on Twitter.
Probably not. Yeah.
There's some snazzy designs she's come up with.
I'd be chapped.
I think this whole thing, I mean, it's no matter how you try and slice and dice it or how they try to say, hey, listen, nobody went to jail. Nobody was even arrested for this. There's none of that there. To the American public, it just feels very dirty. I think no matter how you look at it, it feels really dirty. And it feels like the system that everybody out there is tired of, no matter what side you're on. And I think especially independents, when you just sort of smell that the fix is in one way or the other. And it kind of makes you feel icky about Washington and everybody who spent all their time there on both sides.
Well, and it dovetails so nicely with the Trump campaign's entire message this election season, which has been the government here in the United States is it's bloated, it's too big, it's corrupt, it's mismanaging things, it feeds the wealthy, on and
all
on
those
and on.
Yeah, but I just have a visual. This is a woman who says that things were destroyed. Phones. And now you're going to tell me that her aides' laptops, were they beating the heck out of those with hammers too?
The FBI was doing it.
I mean, this seems...
The FBI was destroying.
This seems a little odd that not only are you closing a case, but you're making sure that it can never be looked upon again. Yeah. Because the evidence wasn't just put in a drawer, it was destroyed.
And what kills me is one of the cleanest parts of our government, and it's true, a lot of the stuff that's happening in the government is corrupted, but one of the cleanest sources that we all look to, kind of as a North Star in the government, was the FBI. I mean, all the FBI agents I've known have been absolute straight arrows. They've been terrific people.
So what's next for Comey?
And here the FBI is playing a part in destroying evidence that could be used in a criminal trial. It boggles my mind.
It just shows that they literally laid out a path to go through the motion, so it would look like that they were investigating this, and they didn't. And they bent over backwards to make sure that nobody would ever get charged with, quite frankly, anything.
Yeah. Wow. The U.S. is ending talks with Russia over efforts to bring a halt to Syria's brutal civil war. We talked about it a little bit earlier this hour, what's happening in Syria. Critics are calling out President Obama for relying on diplomacy as 500,000 people, mostly civilians, have died.
Well, the Obama administration announcing it has suspended talks with Russia that came about as part of the short-lived ceasefire in Syria. Nearly 500,000 people have been killed in that brutal civil war since 2011. Charles Krauthammer coming out with some tough criticism for President Obama, telling Bret Baier the problem is that the president has opponents who will use military force while all he wants to do is talk and use diplomacy. Take a listen.
Obama believes that you don't solve problems like these through force. They can't be. There's no military solution. It has to be done by diplomacy. That would be great if the other side had the same thought. Unfortunately, Putin assumes, and is correct in assuming, that some civil wars have a military outcome. The diplomatic approach has been totally shown to be bankrupt.
On the other hand, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest saying, at least for now, there's nothing more to talk about with the Russians, as he repeated the administration's position that a diplomatic solution is the best way forward in Syria.
Mark, I think everybody's patience with Russia has run out. They've also spent a great deal of credibility in making a series of commitments without any clear indication that they were committed to following them.
Is this a recognition that the policy of reaching a political agreement in Syria has failed?
Well, no, primarily because again, as I was mentioning to Ron, everybody who's looked at this situation, I think, just about everybody, has acknowledged that there's no military solution to this problem.
Gillian, it is a very tough nut, no question about it. The Middle East has always been a tough nut, but Hillary Clinton is running primarily, I would say, on her expertise in foreign policy. What are her two big foreign policy things? The Russian reset, disaster. The Arab Spring, disaster. How can she run on her expertise in foreign policy? She's got the experience, but she doesn't have the results.
Well, I would push back a little there, and I would say that this is one area where she's not entirely a continuation of President Obama. The truth about Hillary Clinton's foreign policy is that she's much more hawkish than people commonly give her credit for.
Do you really think if she had been commander-in-chief during the past 3 or 4 years that she could have come up with a solution in Syria based on her relationship with Russia?
Well, for one thing she did from the get-go, I'm talking 4 or 5 years ago, was advocate that we start arming the Syrian opposition, the moderate rebels, the Kurds, to try and push ISIS back before they metastasize outside of Syria and Iraq. That was something she pushed the president really hard to do that he declined to do. Huge mistake. I'm not defending her record on other parts of the Middle East, like in Libya, say, but she has had some efforts that she's put forward that have been quashed by the White House that were really smart.
Well, like the Iran deal, and the Iran deal has gotten in the way of this very thing.
That's not hers.
Right, but the Wall Street, would she have stood by it in the way that President Obama did? Because the Wall Street Journal reporter cited the reason that red line was crossed and the United States didn't do anything is because Iran, they were at the table with Iran, and Iran said, you don't go
red
after.
Line, just to familiarize the viewers, was that point at which Syria began using chemical weapons.
But you don't. But the point was that Iran told the Obama administration, we walk away from the table if you do anything to the Assad regime, period.
I agree with you. I do think she's different from President Obama, but I think that she is responsible for the first 4 years of the administration when she was there. I look at the Russian reset. I look at her efforts as better than his, but not different enough. I mean, to me, it's sort of like, we've tried it your way. I mean, if I were Donald Trump, that is what I would be saying at every point in the debate when it comes to foreign policy. We've tried it your way. Look where we are. We need a radical difference. Things have gone dramatically
Can I just ask
He does for just a second, because I may go where you're thinking. But just in terms of Iran, I mean, you know, it's impossible to know as we get far out from the future, but right now it looks like that's one of the most important foreign policy decisions that has been made in maybe the last few decades, maybe the open era. It really does have implications of, you know, changing things going forward, predominantly because we don't know what's in those secret side deals. We're starting to see some of what was in them, and it's not looking good. Things like paying the banks and things that we should have known about. So with Hillary Clinton going forward, what you look at with her decisions is how would she handle this very important moment?
Great. So, Jillian, what do you think? If she becomes a commander-in-chief, would she reverse what Obama did with the Iran deal, or would she continue? I think she's going to go straight on with it.
Here's the thing. No one's reversing that deal. I hate to break it to you. Congress loves to talk.
It's not a treaty. It's easy to reverse, by the way. Donald Trump could do it like that if he had the support of the Congress.
It's easy to do it on paper, but it's not easy to walk it back and then implement the sanctions that were so carefully crafted over 10 years that we used to have in place. Meaning, one of the main problems of this Iran deal is that it negated all of